Okay, there we go.
So yeah, like we were out of the house and where I lived, like I mentioned earlier, there was like just under 400 people, I think, in the village. So all the kids went to the same school. Um, and so those two areas, like school and then outside of school, our paths always crossed. Um, it was not uncommon for like 6-year-olds to be outside playing manhunt until dark with like 12 and 13-year-olds. Um, and that just doesn't happen these days. And I don't know about the smaller communities, but I have 4 kids of my own between the ages of 6 and 12. And my boys, I trust them to be out in our small town, but my 8-year-old and my 6-year-old, no, like I just don't, I'm just not comfortable with it. So I think things have definitely changed and we've shortened childhood. There's like the advancement of technology and social media and YouTube, like all of these things, I think are being used a lot more. And the things that our kids have access to these days is so much bigger and scarier and more grown up than they were 30 years ago. And so I think
It's
that's
interesting you say that as a mother of adults, um, because there's also the flip side where there's a very immature part of their social skills.
hmm
Um, they dating is a totally different experience. There isn't that let's be brave and go ask somebody out or let's plan an event so we all get together. It's like I checked them out on an app and no, I don't think so. It's a very I would say immature. They lack the maturity to be more social. And so in some ways, I kind of think it's both. We talk about has it shortened it or lengthened it? It depends on the area. Go ahead, Lily.
I was going to say, I was thinking because it asked you about your grandparents' childhood, and my grandparents were very poor, so they had to work since they were young, and that gets their childhood gotten away, right? So, um, here we are with my oldest daughter still at home. She's still a child. I still have to get her out of bed. I still cook for her. I still do everything for her. So she's still not able to live by herself. I mean, she tried, but she came home, right? She has other things that, we're thinking what happened. But my grandfather was told that her mom was going to die when he was 8 years old, and that since he didn't have any other family around, he needed to go find a job. And so he's been working since he's been eight years old. And they only had a third grade education, but that was good enough for them to be able to read the papers, to go to the dictionary and to find the meaning of the word if they didn't know it. But now, we're just children until we're 30. I don't know how old, but it just seems like we don't have our stuff together and we just want and don't seem to ever be settled and in reality of what the world is about, I think. So I think it's the opposite. I think our childhood has grown to immaturity and we're still children. And our grandparents, they just didn't have a childhood to
Mhm.
enjoy. They just had to work and, not die, just survive.
Yeah, but I do agree with what Carly has said, though, in the sense that they have lost that play, like just play and be a kid. And they receive information and technology and advancement that is wise beyond their years. I mean, they're almost too young to have that
Yeah.
in what we're used to because they miss out on the play. So I think there's both going on. I agree with you though, Lily. They
The
aren't growing up.
pendulum swung because I didn't have a lot of technology. I mean, we had the radio, we had TV, certain hours that we would watch, but most of the time we were playing outside, Barbies or
Mhm.
bicycles or, hide and seek or something with the kids in the block. So I actually had a very idyllic childhood. And so I see the difference and I can compare, my parents, my grandparents, what I know about them. But I'm sad for the kids now that are just mostly indoors and on the screens all the time, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like how we've seen such a rise in extracurricular activities for kids too. Like they are non-stop. Like I look at my sister's kids and I'm like, when do they relax? Like when do they get to be kids and not have all these commitments and extra pressures put on them? Um, Save that for when they're older and they have to work. So yeah,
Mhm.
I definitely
Yeah.
see, yeah, what you guys are saying, like 100%.
Yeah. Thank
You know,
you.
there was a film on TV that they asked people to date each other like blind dates. And it would come up on the bar. It was a bar, restaurant, or something like that. And people would come in and they would dance together, but tapping on their phone and looking at the phone
Ah,
instead of like chatting together. And the restaurant started to demand that people would give them their phone before entering into the restaurant and dance together.
oh,
Because
good.
that was very, and I think virtual life is it's something that I live with my kids that are grown up style, and I mean it's not always good, but it's not always bad. But at the same time, the pace of life is already quick, so we should like just get into contact more, you know, like you guys said before. So
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we'll go into another one. Let's see, we're supposed to answer three, it says.
yeah,
Yeah.
I took the
How
first one
about
like you.
to create the in-group or cohesive community, do you really have to have an out-group that doesn't have membership? Is there danger in being too inclusive or permeable with your community boundaries? See, now I go to the whole Christ-like thing and say nobody should have an out group.
Mhm.
But here's the truth. We can be Christ-like all day long, but that doesn't mean our neighbor wants to be Christ-like. And we can include them all day long, but that doesn't mean that's where they want to be. And so in some ways, that is something that will always be there.
Yeah.
Is that out group, even if you try not to have the out group, because people choose not to be part of you, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. That's
Yeah,
my take on it. Um, is there danger in being too inclusive? I think so. I
Yeah, I
absolutely
agree.
think so.
Well, when we talked to somebody mentioned earlier something somewhere today or in this, I don't remember, talking about groups that kind of go to the extreme, right? They close their doors, they have these ideals, and it's really easy when you get with people who are similar thinking to kind of lean further into that scary territory. Like you think the KKK is a great example, and then they just feed off each other. They close their doors. They're secret. They're private. And I think that's the danger of being too inclusive and not willing to let others in, because they might challenge your thinking and be like, hey, you know what? Actually, that's not right, or you're doing like that's not how the world works. Um, I think you get comfortable and it's just easy to get carried away when you're too
Yeah.
inclusive
I kind of
or
think
exclusive.
as we're talking, I kind of go back to my neighborhood experience with building the fences. We were all from different cultures, different backgrounds. We have a Ukrainian, we have somebody from India, we have a couple that's mixed race. She's Asian, he's Catholic. I mean, we just have this whole abundance of different backgrounds, and yet together we built fences. And I that's the way I would like to see it, is have the diversity, but bring in the inclusion and embrace the diversity.
But it's like it's so blatant in our church because some people have temple recommends and some don't, right? So there's an in group, there's an out group. And we're not going to let everybody in the temple that is not willing or ready to do the covenants and the commandments. So I said by definition, there has to be an out group in every in group because
Yeah.
you can let them in if you want, but you have to have boundaries. You can't be so inclusive that then you don't have a group anymore. You're just a blob.
Yeah. I do think that having standards is perfectly as long as they know the door is open to them too. They can
Right,
have it.
right.
They can
And
have it, but we're not going to drop to you. You got to raise to us.
right.
Yeah. Okay, one more. Let's see where we are with time. Um, how does a community control its membership and identity? And what pressures to confirm, I think it's supposed to say conform, might the
Yeah.
Amish to buy a car or the Latter-day Saint who drinks alcohol and cohabitates feel from their communities?
Yeah, I was gonna text the teachers that doesn't shouldn't say confirm, should say conform.
Yeah.
We always have typos that I'm always reporting, but this is
Mhm.
easy, and I'm like, I'm not gonna bother. You can do it, Joni.
Yeah, I that's a tough one because I've always chosen not to drink and I didn't cohabitate. But I do have family members that do. And and of course we love them and want to include them and we encourage them to attend church. But that's not always what they want to. Um, and in some ways they self-control their community. So they show up when they want to show up and they show up when they don't because they feel uncomfortable. Um, they identify as a member when it's convenient, and they don't most of the time. And so that's kind of that's what I have found. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I think this is a tricky one, um, because we're members of the church and there, I know not myself, but other people, like members of the church have done, I think people don't like to talk about the culture of the church, but there is a culture of, for example, um, people who either struggle to wear their garments after going through the temple, or choose not to. Um, I know that there is a lot of judgment that people receive for the choices that they make. Um, so I think that's not coming from the church, but it's definitely coming from, um, church members. And so I think that, is not necessarily the church, controlling membership, the membership and identity and the things that are going on there, but I think that in a roundabout way, it kind of is because members of the church can be very judgmental. I don't want to sound like very pessimistic in anything, like just based on personal experience and like experiences of people around me. Um, it's not necessarily the church that's doing it, but the members who are like, we're all imperfect. I don't know if I'm making any sense right now. I'm trying to be like sensitive and stuff, but there is a lot of judgment when people aren't living up to the standards that they said they were going to live in. Um, yeah, I don't know if that was very clear enough, but just my
Yeah.
two
No,
cents.
I think that was very clear. I think we do have a culture in the church, and it's different outside of like if you were to take Idaho, Utah, probably even part of Arizona. If you go outside of that,
Mhm.
it's different. It's there is a difference. We lived in the Midwest for a little bit. And our ward at the time covered 6 high schools, just to kind of give you an idea of how small the ward was in comparison to the area. And so our ward was like our family, like our little extended family and things, but you definitely could tell those that came from Utah. Just the attitudes and the mannerisms and things, nothing against Utah. It's just that's the culture they grew up in, and that's just how it was done, um, and things. So on the flip side, I did find Elder Bednar's talk um, fascinating in conference because he talked about basically, now I'm paraphrasing some of this, but just how we've become complacent and used to all our goodness that we're not appreciating it or living up to it.
Mhm.
And so,
Oh,
and I felt like he was calling out a lot of the US members of the church
well, I
as
was
a
going to say,
worldwide church.
if you see how the politics is played and how, they go after, like I was hearing some of these confirmations in the Senate, and it's like they just judge, talk about judgment. Oh my goodness. Like one guy said, we're none of us are perfect. I've had, my problems with my wife, and if my wife hadn't forgiven me, I would be in jail or something like that. And so I think there's always judgment from somewhere, even in our little families. We think, oh, she's the favorite, or I was never the favorite, or whatever. We can always get it in our heads. But I think what we need to do as with this, for example, with this community control membership identity, that's enough. It's like we do our best, and we try to teach our children to do our best and teach them to recognize that others are trying to do their best, and not judge them for
Mhm.
the way that we think things should be done, because it's not like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think here, like maybe what I was trying to say is that maybe our church does not um control our membership and identity. I feel like that comes more from the culture of
Yeah.
some members of our church. Um,
Yeah.
because I don't feel like President Nelson would come, and if he saw me not wearing my garments, I don't think he'd be like, "Hey, hey, hey, I'm judging you." There may be a conversation about it, but I think there are plenty of other people who would have an opinion on it and who would love to share their um, opinions and stuff. So yeah, like I think that separating the culture from the church is really, or any community is really important. Sorry, Eric, go ahead.
Now, you made me think about something really important. I got a good example of that. My first marriage didn't work out, and my wife cheated on me. So she was being excommunicated after having like a meeting with the branch presidency, and so it shows that the church doesn't judge the people, but that for their good they have to be excommunicated because they have taken some covenants. So if they don't follow the covenants, they will be judged harder at the end. So, but the thing is, what I like you said is that uh, things are not accepted by the church, but that can help people to realize what they need to change. If there's no judgment, like you said, if there's love, then the people can come back to church and become better. And in their development, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know
Thank
if
you for
that
that.
makes sense.
No, that did, it made sense to me. It
Mhm.
made
Okay,
sense to me. Thank you for that, Eric. All right, we are pretty much out of time. We just need to, well, we kind of did some of that. Let's see, review the roles for next week's Zoom meeting. So is there somebody who wants to host?
I could host. And
Okay.
I was gonna say, let's keep our first WhatsApp group that I made, because the group that Eric made, I don't know if anybody's in there, and I cannot make comments. So Eric, I'm gonna invite you to my WhatsApp group, and then
yeah,
I'll send you a link there so that we can all come in through the link, okay? And see you
Okay.
next
perfect,
at 7 o'clock.
All
Perfect.
right, so 7 o'clock next week, you'll host, and will we just put in the WhatsApp link what role we'll take? Does that sound good?
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
because there's
All
only
right.
4 of us, so I guess we don't have the 6 that first set, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do we do a closing prayer or do we not?
I don't think so.
Okay.
All
All right.
right.
Well, it was nice meeting you all. We'll see you next
Yes.
week.
All right. Bye.
See you next
Bye.
week.
Bye.
Bye.